All right, well, today we are working on some workshop upgrade projects. These are my favorite kind of projects. I love improving the workshop, the efficiency of it, the overall setup. So today we've got some outside projects to deal with and some projects on the inside. So we built this building a little over a year ago now, and we've been working on efficiency and upgrading. We couldn't go bigger on the overall footprint. This was basically the max size we were allowed to have with the codes of where I live. So in order to have more storage and take advantage, we went tall. But to utilize the tall, we gotta build some stuff. So that's where we're starting today. We're gonna start on the inside project of building some built-in shelves. So we're gonna build a shelf going across here to store stuff, and the same thing over here on the other side. We have the whole wall's height to build shelves up and take advantage of that upward height with storage. We're gonna be adding some lighting underneath, and we've got some cool ideas planned. I'm really excited about this project because I hate clutter, and the goal is to minimize or completely get rid of clutter and stuff piled up on the ground like we have here, and that's what these shelves should allow us to do. So we've got the boards for the base. We've got the steel to build the brackets. So we're gonna get these boards cut to length. Josue's gonna start on staining them. So that way that's done and dusted out of the way. And I'm gonna start on building the brackets to mount them to the wall. I'm not quite sure how I wanna do that yet, so we're gonna figure it out as we go. But first things first, we gotta get these things cut down to length. So we'll pull some measurements real quick and get to cutting. All right, guys, before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, HelloFresh. So I've been using HelloFresh for literally years now because it is an absolute game changer. I've always enjoyed the process of cooking a home cooked meal. It's just not everything else that comes along with it. You know, when we're out here working on these kind of projects specifically, you know, we're working till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. There is just no time to come up with a recipe that I want to make and come up with a grocery list and go to the store. Then I have to get a bunch of something just to get that little bit of something I need for that meal. And then a lot of food gets wasted and then it goes bad in 2-3 days sometimes. With HelloFresh, I cut out all of that. I don't have to go to the store. It's delivered right to my door, fresh, quality ingredients that are delivered from the farm to my door in less than 7 days. So I have that buffer zone if my schedule gets a little wonky and I can't cook a meal when I planned on. And then on top of that, it's made easy. Everything's prepackaged, pre-portioned, pre-planned. You get a super simple, easy to follow recipe. Even someone like me who would definitely not consider myself a cook can cook a delicious meal with a HelloFresh. And the variety is incredible. I mean, they have 40 different weekly meal options. They've got 100 add-ons, so you never get tired of eating the same thing. When I'm picking my own recipes, I end up kind of recycling the same recipes that I know work and that I have those oddball ingredients for. So it's just done a lot for me. You know, I've been able to cut out takeout entirely. I'm eating much better. I feel much better after I eat it. And it's an enjoyable process without all of the difficult parts that I don't like about trying to cook and eat at home. So it's really a win-win. You know, to me, it's really covered all the bases and fixed all the problems I had with cooking meals at home. So I love it. I think it's great. I think you should try it out. I definitely would recommend it. If you are interested in trying it out, go to HelloFresh.com and use code 50TaylorDrifts at checkout to get 50% off plus free shipping. It is a great way to try it out, get your feet wet, just see what you think firsthand. Once you go HelloFresh, you can't really go back. It is pretty much impossible to go back to the standard method of going to the grocery store and doing all that nonsense. So I think you're gonna like it. I would definitely recommend it. But that being said, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. We bit off a lot with this project, so we need to get back to it. So we started clearing everything out of the way that we're going to need out of the way to build and measure the shelves. We know that these measurements are going to be slightly different, so we want to be precise, and they are just about a ½ inch from one side to the other. So we went ahead and started marking all of our boards so that we could get those cut to length so that we don't have to cut them after they're stained, and we're not staining parts of the board that we're not going to use. So we got them all marked, and then we started working on cutting each one of them down to length. Luckily, I got this saw for building this wood table workbench that we have in the middle of the shop. I debated getting it, but it's almost always worth getting a new tool that's going to make your life easier because you will use it in the long run, and this is one of those times where we're using it. So once we were done cutting the boards to length, we took everything outside. We don't want to stink up the shop with this stain. We've learned our lesson there. Even with the big shop, the smell just gets everywhere. Then we've got to turn the ACs off and open the doors. So we just decided to start with doing it outside, and Josue started working on getting these stained. Now we decided to go with stain and instead of paint, just because this is kind of nice cedar wood and I want that pattern to kind of show through. If I'm using wood, I like for you to be able to tell that it's wood. I don't really like to use wood that much. I'm more of a metal guy myself, both just in the fabrication of it, the finish, the durability, but in this case, it was easier to get these wood planks than it was to come up with some way to do this out of metal. So we started staining them black so they blend in, but you still know it's wood. We got them flipped over. We didn't really have the time to do this the way you'd want to, where we let the top side dry and then we flip it over. So basically the last side to get stained is going to be our underneath side that you're going to see, and the top side, you know, it can have some marks and some dings on it. It's not that big of a deal. You're not going to see it anyway. All right, we got all of our boards stained. They came out really good. Super pumped on that. The stain works well. You can still see the wood grain texture. Overall, these should look really nice when they're all installed. But before we can install them, we've got to start building our brackets. So before we do that, though, we need to make a supply run for our first outside project. I want to get this stuff here so we have it and we're ready to go. So what we're going to be working on out here is something that we have needed out here since day one, and that is a walkway to the door here. You can see when it rains and when we go in and out, we've basically rutted this out here. So the big puddle develops. Just in general, it's a good bit lower than the door frame opening, so you've got to step in and out of the shop, and you just get your feet wet. It's a pain when it rains, and it's Florida, so it rains pretty often, so it's a nuisance. So we're going to build a walkway from the driveway into the shop, but then we're also going to add an extension over here and give ourselves a little porch hangout area out here. That way we can build an awning for the top and have a nice chill spot. While we're mixing, pouring, and forming concrete, we might as well build the porch in with it too. So we gotta go get a bunch of bags of concrete and some other supplies and get to work. You ready, Freddie?
Yeah, buddy.
Not that one.
I didn't grab it.
You grabbed the beater cart.
I barely put hands on it.
All right, well, we got all of our supplies. We got stakes, we got trowels, different kinds. We got rebar ties, we got rebar, we got string. We got the fiberglass rebar sticks, wood for our form boards, and then a boatload or a truckload of concrete. I don't know if I've ever seen it squat this hard. I mean, we've got about 4,000 pounds of concrete back here. So yeah, we got everything we need. Now we need to go ahead and get started on digging out our area and putting in the form boards. So we got to work on marking out our area, staking it out so that we could put the form boards in. But first, and more importantly, once we get the stakes in and we have the area determined, we need to start digging out all of the grass. Now, we do want to bring this up to closer to the level of the shop, which is a good bit higher than the driveway and a good bit higher than the ground. So we shouldn't have to dig down too deep to make this work, but we are going to have to dig out this grass. You can't put concrete on top of this. We need to be able to level the surface and pack it down. So once we got the stakes in and we got our string in, we knew our perimeter and we started digging up all of the grass spots. This is a pretty tedious process. This grass is tied together pretty well because there's a lot of crabgrass in here. For some reason, that likes to grow way easier than the regular grass. So it's rooted together pretty well, but we got to work on that. We had our whole area marked out. Now it's going to go from this little walkway to this big pad, and there's two reasons for this. Reason number one is just, you know, it adds a little bit of flair having that little grass pocket, but also more importantly, there is a sprinkler there, and we need to make sure that that can still do its thing. It should spray over the pad. We don't have to worry about it spraying the pad, but we want to leave it. We need that one there once we eventually get the irrigation system working again. All right, well, we're getting somewhere. We got our rough layout squared away. Now we just got to grade it and compact it down and get ready to start putting the form boards in. But I'm pretty excited about this. It's really starting to take shape. I think we got the size right to be big enough to have a nice size porch area, but not so massive that it's way more work to do, right? Any bit bigger we build it, it's more work in every department. So I think this is a good compromise. It feels good. You just even see the rough shape of this. It's something I've wanted to do for so long. So yeah, I'm gonna get the truck pulled over here so that once we're done, we can start pulling the concrete bags out and get to work on mixing and pouring. It definitely said no rain was forecast for the next week. So much for that. I literally checked the weather an hour ago when I was on my way back from Harbor Freight. It's like, let me check the weather. The sky looks a little cloudy in some spots. Maybe it's gonna pass. No rain. Not even a slight chance of rain. An hour ago. Oh, Florida. You make it so hard. It's coming down. All right, well, it stopped raining. Sort of. Still drizzling. It is blue skies over there. Mostly blue, some gray. That storm was intense and came out of nowhere. I'm gonna start cutting our form boards here. And Josue's working on leveling out our grade. So Josue's working on moving the dirt around, trying to get this as level as possible so we can compact it. Like I said, we don't have to dig a ton, which is nice, saves us some effort there, but we do obviously want to make sure that it is level and it is nicely compacted so that the pad doesn't try to sink or shift on us. So while he's moving all that dirt around, trying to get that squared away, I was working on our form boards. I decided to start with the most challenging portion. This area, this little walkway by the sprinkler is going to be the trickiest because not only does it taper down there and go around the sprinkler, but we've got a compound angle to deal with. We want the pad to be high enough to be a nice easy step up into the door, but it's got to come down to meet the driveway. But then the driveway itself also slopes down from the building out. So we've basically got two angles to work with here, and then we're going to try to get those to meet up with what we want to be a level and flat and square pad. So it's going to be a little bit tricky. We've got to work the dirt around, use a level, try to get this as square and level as possible so that we can get a nice result, nice smooth transition from the driveway up onto the pad. So we get that piece cut, and once we get this section done, we get it squared away, we get it leveled out and screwed into the stakes exactly where we want it. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. It's just straight pieces. We do need to make sure that they're level and that they're square. Aside from that, it's just making sure that where they meet up, it's nice and tight so we don't end up with any weird spots, and that they're secured well enough to where when we start pouring a bunch of concrete in here, they don't push and shift out of the way and leave us with some weird edge. So it started raining again, typical Florida. So we moved on to cutting our rebar, so at least that's ready when the weather is. All right, well, this is what we got so far, but it keeps raining. Like, look at all that, look at that mess. Now we gotta pat this down all over again and clean off the side of the shop, but we're getting there. We've got compression joint board to go up against the shop there, and we just gotta finish this piece here. Then we can start laying out our grid of rebar. We're getting there. If the rain would stop, we'd be pouring by now. As soon as we got another break from the rain, we got right back to work, back to hustling on finishing out our form here. I really want to get this done and dusted and dialed in because this is really the most critical step. This and the base, packing that down, having that level. But the form is what you're going to see. If this is off, if it's wavy, if it's wonky, if it's not square, you're going to notice that. So I want to get it done as early as possible so that we can take a good look at it and make sure we're happy with it before we start pouring concrete. So once the form was done, once all of that was tidied up, we started filling in the little cracks and crevices with dirt to make sure no concrete seeps out there, and then went for one more level and compaction of all of this. The trickiest part is that slope part going down to the driveway, trying to keep the thickness even across it so that we have an easier time when it comes to leveling out the top of it. So Josue was working on that with the rake and the compactor, and then it was time to put our foam board up against the shop. So this is just going to separate the pad from the shop. We don't want them to be one piece. You know, we don't want the pad pulling on the shop. We don't want it working its way into the siding or anything like that. So we're using this board as kind of a barrier there and to allow it to flex and compress and hopefully prevent further cracking. We did the same where the slope portion meets the driveway, and then it's time to lay out our rebar grid. So we went a little heavy with the rebar. We do want this to be strong as possible. So we went with some 3/8 inch fiberglass rebar rod, got that all laid out in a nice 2x2 grid format, roughly. We didn't measure it exactly, doesn't need to be exact. And we got all those tied together and the prep work is done. All right, we've got our form completed. We've got our rebar in and all tied together. We're making solid progress. We've got basically all of the prep work is done. We've set it up with a slight angle forwards. That way, if it does rain, the water will ideally run off the front instead of collecting back by the building. But it's getting a little too late to start pouring concrete. We're just not gonna have enough time to do it all, so we might as well wait till tomorrow. But we've got the prep done and we took our time, and I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. How do you feel?
Feel good.
Feel good?
Yeah. I think we took our time doing all the prep work.
So yeah, anyway, we'll pick this back up tomorrow. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
This giant branch just fell off the RV. Not giant, but it's a good sized branch to just fall. All that wind we had today with that rainstorm. All right, well, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by the branch, tomorrow morning I'm gonna start on the bracketry. I've just been going down the rabbit hole a bit on how much structure I wanna put there. One of those things, 2 quick projects can turn into a big project. Some simple shelves and a little walkway turned into a giant patio and more complicated shelves. So anyway, we'll pick this back up in the morning, get back to work. So the next day we started working on some more prep work. It's one of those things, you always think you're done, you think you're ready, but we wanted to make sure we were 100% confident we'd done everything we needed to do before we started pouring this concrete. So one thing we thought about was the fact that we're gonna be doing this in small batches that we're mixing by hand. So we're not gonna be able to really lift the rebar up as we pour the concrete in to make sure it's in the concrete, not under the concrete. So we cut these little wood blocks just to space it up enough to where the concrete should mix under it and tied them in nicely. Well, we're actually ready this time, and it's raining. So hoping it doesn't last too long. We're really trying to get this pour done today. Just really ready to pour this concrete.
We've been ready.
We were born ready. This is day 3 of getting rained out. Every single day it said it's not gonna rain, every single day it has rained. All right, we're doing it.
Before the stakes. Now we're ready.
Should we cut them? Probably. We should cut them. Start raining before we get in.
And I really thought we were ready.
You gotta be kidding me. We cannot win. All right, well, we're gonna have to shift our focus to the shelves because it just won't stop raining. I'm sure if we start working on the shelves, then it'll stop raining, but this is how much water was dumped in probably 10 minutes of it raining. It downpoured. This whole thing is a little swimming pool right now in just that short period of time. I mean, look at this. It doesn't seem like it's gonna stop. Seems like we're gonna get some more rain. But it's sunny over there. It was sunny when it started. Anyway. It's not like the shelf project doesn't need to get done. It needs to get done too. I don't like bouncing around if we can avoid it, but we're just gonna have to. We gotta work around the weather. It is raining again, so I think we made the right call. Let's get to cutting some metal for these shelves. I got a plan. I think it's gonna work, so wish us luck. So we started setting up the dry cut saw to cut some steel. Now, I normally use this for cutting stainless exhaust stuff. That's what I use it for 90% of the time. So it had a stainless blade on it. So we got the blade swapped out to a regular steel blade. and then got to cutting. So the way I'm going to do these is I'm going to 45 them together. It's going to look nicer. It's going to be cleaner. It's going to allow me a nice spot to weld around. So basically we do the first cut that gives us the 45 on essentially both pieces. So then the second cut needs to be a straight cut. So I check them to make sure that they're lining up nicely. Ideally we'll keep each piece together since the cut is the same, and work our way through, and that way everything lines up and meets up together nicely. Now we're using this 1 inch by 2 inch rectangular tubing. This stuff is thick. It's 1/8 inch thick wall, so that way it should be nice and sturdy. We should be able to put a lot of heat into it when we weld it, get good penetration, and make sure we don't have to worry about this thing breaking on us when we start adding weight to this shelf. So I just got to cutting away, and Josue started working on drilling out the holes. We've got to do kind of a combo of holes on this because we need access holes for the screws and the head of the tool that's going to put the screw in, and then also holes for the screws to go through. So Josue's drilling. It's still raining, it's pouring again, so we made the right call on switching gears and moving on to this project. So while he was doing that, I was working on getting everything cleaned up. Now, I don't have to fully clean up these pieces. I could just clean up where I'm welding, but if I'm TIG welding, I like to work with clean steel. I like everything being nice, shiny, bright metal, and I am going to TIG weld this because it'll allow me to control the heat a lot better. It'll allow me to get much better penetration, and it'll keep the weld nice and small, keep everything looking clean. I do enjoy MIG welding, and it is a lot simpler and easier for something like this, but the TIG, you just get a much smaller profile weld, and again, you're able to kind of control that weld and that heat a lot better. So I got the long pieces cleaned up that don't have holes in them, and as he was finishing up drilling the holes in the other pieces, I was getting those cleaned up, so those are ready to go on. And then it was about figuring out how I want to fixture this on the table to keep everything square. These cuts aren't perfect. They cut at kind of a double angle. I don't know if the blade or the head of the saw was walking, but they're not perfectly square with each other. So we've got to make sure we get them square and sacrifice by having some gaps. So I came up with a good method to clamp them on my fixture table, get them all squared up nicely, get them all tacked. And then once we tack through all 6 of these brackets, we could start welding them out. Now, as I said before, since we are TIG welding these, I'm going to try to put a lot of heat and get a lot of deep penetration with these welds. And fortunately, the inside welds look nice, but that's not really what I'm worried about here. These brackets are going to be painted. They're going to be up on the wall. You're not going to see the weld. You know, I'm always going for structure over aesthetics most of the time with welds. In this case in particular, you know, you're never going to see the welds once these are finished. So I'm just trying to put a ton of heat into these without warping them too much. Now, fortunately, these aren't a precise tolerance type of thing. If they did warp a little bit, it's really not that big of a deal. It is nice working on projects like this compared to what I'm used to, where the tolerances don't have to be so dang precise. All right, all of our brackets are done and welded. The inside welds came out pretty nice. They're all pretty similar, pretty consistent. It's not that hypercritical of pieces, but they're roughly square. The cuts weren't perfect. Anyway, I'm jibber jabbering technical mumbo jumbo. They're done and they are ready to go up on the wall. So we're gonna start installing them. Nice. What I was debating was if I wanted to add basically either a center crossbar tying them together, or a bar here, or 3 bars. But then it just becomes, well, at that point, why don't I just make it a metal shelf? Why am I even using the wood? So we're gonna try this. If we end up putting super heavy stuff up here and it's bowing like crazy, then we'll address it. But I mean, it looks pretty good. Definitely snazzy little combo. All right, we got both shelves roughly installed. Still need to finish screwing in the supports, and then I need to get some more self-tappers to screw the wood down into those supports, and then we need to add the lights. But they're up, pretty snazzy looking, pretty pumped on that. So today is the day, hopefully today. I don't want to jinx this. Well, we got some sunshine. Probably won't have it, but for 2 or 3 hours. So we got to work smart, not smart and hard, quick and fast. Try to get this done before Florida does typical Florida things. So everything's ready. Rebar is tied together. Rebar is spaced up. Since we're not getting a pour from a truck, it would be hard to kind of lift it up as we poured it. We're going to be pouring in small batches. That's going to be, I think, the most challenging part of this. It's just trying to be quick with the batches so that we can kind of work it all together. Yeah. Anything? Any thoughts? Any final thoughts?
Quick and efficient. Don't panic. Don't panic. Everything's under control. We are professionals.
Let's get to it.
I feel like as we mix it, then we can, spray it down to it.
For the record, I've never precisely measured mixing concrete.
Does anybody know what the right way to is there? Because honestly, on the bag, it doesn't say anything. They just says add water.
Yeah, I think it's by feel. That's how I used to do it when I worked construction here. Have you casually poured? I've never done finished concrete though. I've only done footers. Did a bunch of footers. So start pouring it slowly.
Like that is so.
Yeah, slower than that. Oh. And move it around some. Like get up in this corner. Just get it in there. Pour the rest of it.
We're figuring out the technique. We'll figure out. I'm gonna switch it up. Yeah, see, like you said, like it seems like it's not enough water.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to give it a look, and then it looks like junk.
See, like you can just, when you do it with the hose, you can just moist the dry parts. So Josue wanted to do everything he could to make sure this turned out correctly, and we didn't waste a bunch of time doing this. Now, I've done concrete before, and whenever I've done footers, you just kind of mix it by feel. You add some water, you mix it, you add some water, you mix it. So we tried to do a precise measurement, and I was open to the idea just because we're doing a bunch of small batches, and we want them to be consistent. So we tried it as I pretty much expected. It didn't work. You need to be able to spray it and get water kind of all over the dry spots and help you mix it together. So we started mixing it, and as we're going along here, we're realizing this is going to take a while. We knew it was going to be time consuming, but mixing each of these wheelbarrows, fortunately we get 2 bags per wheelbarrow, but mixing this together, it's going to take us some time, and I'm not confident that we're going to get enough batches done to get across this whole pad before the first half starts drying. So we ended up deciding to break it into sections. I went ahead and put a board right at the end of this slanted portion. This is going to be the trickiest part to get level. So of course we started with this one and we went ahead and got that leveled out and worked on changing up our game plan a little bit. All right, well, we've got really the hardest part and the first part poured and roughly leveled out. We got to wait for it to tack up a little more to try to work on the finish and the edges and all that stuff. But we decided to stop here, throw this board in, because there's no way we're gonna get through this with the wheelbarrow. By the time we get to the other side of the pad, this is gonna be dry. So we decided to basically put a pause here. Josue's on his way to get a little concrete mixer from Harbor Freight. That'll make this a lot quicker. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull all the brackets off so I can throw a coat of paint on them while it's not raining. Part of me wants to just finish this up and not paint them, but that's not the right, it's gonna look way better painted. So I'm gonna pull these off, throw a coat of paint on them, and then Josue will be back with the mixer, and then we'll keep going. Hopefully, come on, Florida, just give us one day. Just one day. Let us get this done, please. Very satisfying so far, though. So I went ahead and started pulling the brackets off. We had only done 2 screws per, and we hadn't screwed the boards into the brackets, so it was kind of now or never. It was going to be way easier now. Now, one thing that we did need to do is we needed to mark which one was which, because the holes aren't exactly precise from one to the other. So I went ahead and marked on the top and then put a piece of tape on it, and just that part's going to be unpainted. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. Even if we left these completely unpainted in an air-conditioned shop, it would be fine. Even if we left them completely unpainted outside, that's 1/8" thick steel. It'd probably take my lifetime for them to rust all the way through. So just a little spot just to make sure we get the orientation right, make our jobs a little bit simpler when it comes to reassembly. All right, brackets are painted. We got to assemble this thing ASAP and get back to pouring, because that part we already poured is like already dry. You know what I do need to do? I'm gonna cut a little, one of these little foam things to match that board, so when we take that board out. So we started working on getting this thing assembled. This was one of kind of my biggest gripes with deciding to pause in the middle of this project to go get this thing, was that we would have to put it together like everything you buy nowadays. But I thought it'd be worth it to save us the backbreaking labor of mixing it ourselves. So while Josue started working on finishing the assembly, I was working on getting everything ready for the next pour, getting our foam board set up, getting all of that done. And then once I was finished and squared away with that, I jumped back on helping him get this thing assembled so we could get this done as quickly as possible. We are in a race against time here. We are in a race against the Florida summer afternoon showers. It is a guarantee. Even if the Weather Channel says it isn't, it is.
Look at that.
So once we confirmed the mixer worked and that the belt tension was right and all of that was squared away, it was time to finish the assembly, get everything buttoned up, and then head outside because the clouds are already rolling in. So I got the separation board pulled out, got the foam board put in, and loaded in our first bag of concrete. And it didn't want to work, but it turned out just to be an extension cord, no problem, simple issue, and we started mixing it, and definitely a lot easier than doing it with a shovel. However, we ran into our first problem when it came time to pour the first batch out. The only way to pour it out is for the mixer to be in the pad where we're going to be pouring the concrete, which just was not an ideal solution for us. So we tried to do a second batch to see if we could pour it into the wheelbarrow, but you can't really get it all out. And then it was getting stuck in the mixer and getting stuck in the blades basically that go around and mix it. And we decided after all that work getting the mixer that we were just going to switch back to the wheelbarrow, which we could have done in the first place. Talk about insult to injury, but hey, we got to do what we got to do. The clouds are rolling in. We've got to get this thing poured. So as we're hammering out batch after batch in the wheelbarrow, this is a lot of work, man. Those of you who work concrete or have mixed concrete by hand like this, you know, lugging these 80-pound bags around, mixing them up, it is a lot of work. And we realized that we were going to need a break at some point. So I decided to cut another separation board, get that put in, and basically split the main slab into two pieces. So we got to go absolutely flat out to get through the first half, and then we can take a break. We can chill for a minute, catch our breath, and then move on to the second slab. There's just no way we're going to get this all done in one shot. I mean, even if we had the stamina to do it, just mixing it in time, it's going to start curing before we can get down to the other end. So we're cruising right along. We're getting through. We've got it pretty well filled up. It's obviously a little bit trickier to kind of get everything level when you have such a big slab to deal with, because it's harder to eyeball it, and we don't have a good way to use a scraper board to go across it. So we're just kind of doing it by hand. So I start mixing the last batch, and we're kind of at an in-between phase where we need a little bit more, not a ton more. We're not really sure how much more we need. We just got to kind of feel it out. And as we're coming up on the end of this one section, Florida decides it has other plans for us. All right, well, Florida'd, and the rain came in and made our lives a lot more challenging. We put up the 10 by 10, but then it was dripping onto the back, and we're finishing up, straightening out this slab, and then start pouring the next one. Slowly but surely. It's looking pretty good though. So as much as the timing was bad with the rain, it could have been worse. It's a good thing we did that divider board and decided to split this up, because the rain came in right as we had finished and smoothed out the surface. We were sitting pretty, everything was looking good, and then the rain came in and messed it all up for us. So we had got it back pretty good. You know, we had fixed a lot of the issues that came from the rain raining on it, and we were getting ready to move on to the next slab. So we got our divider board in there. I was getting everything prepped for that while Josue was finishing out the rough finish work on the first slab, and things are looking good. It was looking good for pouring this next slab, and looking like we were going to get this done today. Finally, we had sunshine. We now had shade since we had to get the tin out anyway, and we had a method that was pretty down packed on mixing the concrete, and we just started hammering down and getting to it. So basically the way we would do this is we'd put 2 bags in. I would spray while Josue got the initial mix done. You know, you've got to kind of keep constantly spraying it, just little bits. You don't want to over soak it, but you need to get all the dry dust wet. And then then once we had it roughly mixed and we had about the right amount of water in, I would start helping him mix with the smaller shovel. And we were cruising right along, man. We were going through this a lot quicker than we expected. It's one of those things with any new project that you don't have a ton of experience in. Usually by the end of it, you're pretty quick, you're pretty efficient, you're pretty good at it. And by then it's kind of too late. But so far things are looking good. You know, despite that rainfall almost threatening to destroy the first half of the slab, we got it smoothed out. We've got it looking better than we could have hoped. And now we're on to the home stretch. We've got the second portion of the slab almost there. We've got one, maybe two more batches to do, and then we can level this one out, we can smooth it out, and we can call this project that has been put on hold numerous times done and dusted. So I'm mixing up the last batch while Josue's spreading everything out. Obviously, we should have done this with a board that we could have scraped across with. There was no good way to do it. Regardless, we're getting it done. We're making it happen. But then Florida decides again, yet again, to rain on our parade. Who would have guessed it?
Well, it started raining again. We tarped it because this one is getting little craters in it from the water. That one's still completely wet. Hopefully it stops in time for us to finish that one. Florida, come on, just let us get through this, please.
While we waited for the rain to stop, there was nothing really else that we could do, so we decided to go ahead and try to get these shelves finished up, so it was at least one thing done and dusted.
All right, shelves are installed. Concrete pad is done and covered because it'll probably rain again. We'll pick this back up in the morning.
All right, well, the shop is an absolute disaster, and that's how you know it was a hustle project. Like normally I like to put everything away at night, clean up, keep things clean as we're working through, but there was just no time. We were just racing against Mother Nature. Silly concrete mixer, completely worthless. But yeah, check this out. I went ahead and pulled the cover off the slab just now. Probably shouldn't be walking on it, but otherwise I gotta lift that door every time I wanna go in and out. But yeah, no, it came out pretty good. You can see some marks from the tarp in different areas. Like we had to tarp it last night because if it rained again, the droplets coming off the shop, since we don't have gutters, just demolished this area. Even with the tarp, it got into it a little bit. But overall, we brushed it, and the surface looks pretty good. I'm pretty dang happy with that. For the hand we were dealt, man, it was an exhausting project, first of all. But for the hand we were dealt with the rain coming in at the wrong times, you know, basically we had got this slab mostly level when the first rainstorm came in. So then we were fighting, you know, trying to keep leveling it out as the water kept messing it up. And then this one, we literally got the last pour in, started shuffling it around when the rain came down, and we had to cover both to keep that one from getting more messed up because it was still reasonably wet. By the time the rain stopped and we got back out here, this one had already started to dry. It started to cure a bit. So we didn't have as much leeway to move it around. You know, it would have been nice to get it closer to level before we had to tarp it, but the timing just didn't work out that way. It was a fight. It was a struggle against the rain, but we got it done. I am beat, man. That was a rough project. It reminded me that I never want to go back to my construction days. But we got it done. Very satisfying. I can't wait to see it with all the all the stuff out of the way and the form boards pulled off. But for now, I got to throw some water on it to help cure it. It's going to be really nice just to even have a walkway for when it's raining, but to have a little porch here, going to be satisfying. So that being said, I'm going to do that. But once I do that, I want to go ahead and move on to our shelves here. I want to get these done. I'm trying to get both these projects done. So we need to attach them to the supports and then put some lights under here. Because as you can already see, there's a pretty big shadow here, and this is, you know, kind of a worktop we use often. So I want to get those finished up, call this whole thing done and dusted, and clean the shop up. I cannot stand a messy, cluttered shop, which is kind of the whole point of the shelves. So that being said, I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. It's time to get back to work. Alright, well, since I know there's going to be someone or someones that comment about how I should have put some angle bracing in here, here's the deal. The self-tapper is our weak link. I trust my weld on that piece of 1/8 inch thick steel a lot more than I trust those self-tappers, and I still trust them enough to hold some serious weight. I'll show you. the wood is really our limiting factor here. You know, if I were to sit over here, it doesn't bow that bad. I don't want to push my luck to snap through one of these boards. We may have to add some bracing in between the brackets at some point, but plenty strong enough. This weld, I've done this before on some other things, welding carts, things like that. Welds are a lot stronger than you think they can be sometimes, especially on some 1/8" thick steel like this. That's why I decided to go with the thicker steel here, so I could really torch that thing in. I mean, we're at 145 amps most of the way around it, so I think we'll be good. Moral of the story, time to put some lights on it.
So for lighting, I didn't want something too crazy bright that it's gonna blind you if you're looking over there, but I wanted something bright enough to do the job. So I got these under cabinet lights to try, and I had a rough plan of how I was gonna do this. I wanted to put 2 over the toolbox, 1 over the pack out boxes on each side. So I bought 2 kits, which had 3 in them, but I realized it was A, not gonna be enough light, B, we were gonna have to deal with trying to tie up these ugly cords in between each one, and there's an option to basically just butt them up against each other. So I decided to just do 3 over the toolbox, 3 over the pack out boxes, and roll with that.
All right, well, I got the lights up. It looks pretty good. So I'll just have to get 2 more packs to do the other side. I got 1 pack for each side, but overall, pretty dang happy with the shelves, how they came out. We still got to decide what we want to put up there. I'm thinking smaller, more consumable stuff. But either way, more storage is more storage. If I can add storage anywhere, I'm going to add it, because the more places we have to put things, the more we can reduce clutter. So here, if you want to take a look at the slab uncovered, came out pretty dang good. I'm, all things considered, very, very happy with it. So check it out. There's our finished slab. This area is the one I'm most happy with, because it's a compound angle where we're sloping down from the slab, but then also sloping this way. So the fact that we got that pretty level, pretty stoked on that. Overall, very, very happy with this for our first slab. Came out really good. We do have some drop spots here from the lack of gutter, but overall, for all the things we dealt with, the rain coming in and out, I think it looks pretty good. It's got a nice brush finish to it. Overall, stoked with that. So we gotta wait a couple days to pull the form boards off. I'm gonna cover it back up. Gotta wet it a few more times to help it cure, but overall, the pad is done. I cannot wait to get some chairs, table. I'm excited to do the overhang we're gonna do. It's coming along nicely. And at least now we won't have to step through a giant mud puddle and step up 6 inches to get into the shop. So overall, very, very pleased with that. So that being said, this has been a long one, but I'm really, really happy that we got both of those projects done, the shelves and the pad. I can't wait to see it fully finished up. But for now, we just gotta let it sit, do its thing, and cure. So that being said, I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. I'm gonna let you guys go. But I do wanna say thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and then I sure hope I'll get to see you next time. Goodbye.